On this episode of Hoosier Adventures, we check out Frankfurt, Germany. It might seem like an odd place to start this video off in a train station, but since it was the first place we technically went to in Frankfurt, I figure it's kind of fitting. A little bit about this train station, compared to the other train stations in the major cities of Germany, is that this one is the showpiece. This was an amazing train station in the style of true grand European style train stations, whereas the other ones that we saw in Berlin and Munich were not nearly this impressive. In fact, the one in Munich is downright ugly and not really worth noting, except for the fact that it's under renovation. You can just see this amazing glass roof. Sort of everything you want to be there in train stations are there. I personally love trains and I love train stations, so I got to highlight this. Here it is from the outside. You'll notice DB up there. That stands for Deutsche Bahn, and that's sort of like the German train service. You'll see that all over Germany and all over the different train stations if you go there. And now we're just going to explore a little bit of the neighborhood around the train station. So initially, we got off the train and we walked down this center street that dead ends into the train station. Now we're walking away from it towards the more business center area of Frankfurt. So Frankfurt is incredibly modern by a lot of European city standards. It has a lot of skyscrapers, which is kind of unusual for a European city. And it gives the city sort of a lot of different feelings and a lot of different pockets and neighborhoods and things like that. So you can go from one part of Frankfurt to another and feel like you've gone completely to a different city. Of course, Frankfurt is one of the financial centers of Europe. It's actually the headquarters of the European Central Bank. So here you have this very famous sculpture of the symbol for the euro. This area is actually what I think of when I think of Frankfurt. It's what I see in the pictures of Frankfurt or the advertisements for Frankfurt or anything to do with it. So when I think Frankfurt, I actually think of these skyscrapers here. I don't know what any of them are called, but. And now we're getting into the older part of Frankfurt. So this is the backside of Frankfurt's municipal building here. You can see this lovely bridge that goes over the road. You'll see the more famous view of this building, which faces out onto a square, here in a few minutes, if you just bear with us. We didn't know what this building was when we first saw it. We actually asked this gentleman here that we just walked past. We thought it was a museum at first. Of course, it's not a trip to Europe without a bunch of old churches. They're all worth going to see, but just keep in mind that if you go to enough of them, they all just kind of blend together. Germany is famous for its Rathskellers, which are restaurants in the basement of municipal buildings. Now, unfortunately, the Rathskeller here, when we were in Frankfurt, wasn't open. However, we did get to go to the Rathskeller in the basement of Munich City Hall. So in a future video, we'll have some footage of that, and you can check that out. As you can tell, this building is sort of an architectural gem. It's actually a collection of several different buildings that have been consolidated into one, and they sort of kept that theme, so it looks really cool. Over on the left of the screen, you're going to see this giant U on top of a pole. That's the entrance to the German U-Bahn, which is the subway in Frankfurt, Berlin, and Munich, and other cities like that. They just call it the U-Bahn. And this is the more famous vantage point to see the Romer. It'll appear in a lot of books and things like that if you look up pictures. And then off in the distance, you can see Frankfurt's Cathedral, which we're actually going to go up in later in the video. So make sure to stay tuned. Don't tune out. You're going to want to see that because the view is spectacular. Frankfurt has this wonderful river that runs through it, and you can walk along it. There's some cafes and places to eat along it as well. Overall, I was very surprised by Frankfurt. We went to Frankfurt just because it was the place that was easiest to get a direct flight to from the United States. And my wife and I really didn't have very much interest in going to Frankfurt. But once we got there, we were pleasantly surprised. So I would very much recommend it. Overall, Frankfurt's just a great middle ground between sort of the quote-unquote new world and the old. You get that new fancy, pristine central business district that you're going to see off on the right here, and you get some of that old European style charm. So if you're coming from the United States, it's a good transition. There again, you can see the central business district. And here's Frankfurt's Cathedral. So you can go up into Frankfurt's Cathedral, the top there. It costs, I want to say, €2 to €6. I don't remember exactly how much it was, but it wasn't bad. But you do have to climb these stairs. Now, this is my tinfoil hat conspiracy. I think there's an elevator. I can't find anything about it online, but I'm pretty sure there's an elevator. When I was on top, at the top of the cathedral here, there was actually a woman with a baby in a baby Bjorn. And I was kind of thinking, well, how'd she get up those stairs? And so she had me take a photo of her because she was alone with the baby. And I turned and immediately walked down the staircase. And when I got to the ground floor, she was already there walking around. So she had to have taken an elevator. There's no way she could have passed me. But again, I can't find anything about it online. So you might be able to take an elevator rather than taking the narrow, steep set of stairs to the top. Now, of the cathedrals we went up in on our trip, Frankfurt definitely offered the best views. Frankfurt has a diverse city skyline that has both old and new architecture, as well as some cool skyscrapers. And the cathedral is very close to the river, so you get those great river scenes. So it affords a lot of great photo opportunities. Here you can see a cool gargoyle. At the top, you can really appreciate some of this architecture that is too small or too exact to admire from the ground. So when you get up there, don't forget to look back at the cathedral rather than just out at the city skyline. I was definitely out of breath when I got to the top of the cathedral as well. It is quite the hike, and those stairs are narrow, and you don't want to trip, obviously. Spent a good deal of time up here at the top. It wasn't very crowded that day. You won't see other people in my shots just because there were very few. And if you look down, that's the bridge that I had video of going across earlier in the video, as well as the roamer and the square that it sits on. I have footage from all the different views looking in all the different directions, so just kind of soak this up. Yeah, overall, it's a wonderful experience, especially being so cheap, and you get your workout for the day in. So it's sort of like a little bit of a bonus. Now, from the top of Frankfurt to below Frankfurt, this is a U-Bahn station. I just wanted to get some video of it because I thought it looked really cool. A lot of these U-Bahn stations in Frankfurt and the other cities were built in the 60s, so they have this very sort of retro modern look to them. They just kind of look like what everyone thought the future would look like in the 60s. So I thought I would definitely get some footage of the station. Well, I hope you enjoyed some footage of my trip to Frankfurt, and be on the lookout. I've got more videos from my trip to Europe. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Hoosier Adventures, and remember to keep traveling.